G'day, it's Clint here, and I've got a guest with me today who's been an intensive care nurse throughout her career. She developed rheumatoid arthritis a couple of years back and has a great story of success to share with us today. It's Julie from Adelaide. How are you going, Julie?
I'm good, thanks.
Now, give us a snapshot of what we're in for. We like to do this at the start of each episode, is just to give us a little before and then after, so that we get an idea of how far you've come.
Mm-hmm. So I'll start with in September, when my husband and two kids and my two children were on holiday in Alice Springs camping. Just before we left, I had stiffness in my fingers and it felt really unusual, and I thought, that doesn't feel right. So I went to the doctor, who suspected there was something wrong with my joints, and he referred me to rheumatology. But then we travelled to Alice in the car with a trailer with camping tent on the back. And over those days, I started to feel stiff and pain in my joints, and I noticed it was taking me a lot longer to get in and out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel well in myself. Anyway, so we end up in Alice and we're camping and we're on a bed on the blow-up mattress on the floor, and the pain was getting worse and all my joints were hurting. Moving was really difficult. It was taking me 5 minutes to get off of the floor when normally it would take me 20 seconds.
Wow, yep.
It was taking me a long time. I had to get things to support me to be able to get up.
Yeah, where was it all throughout the joints? Was it mostly your fingers, wrists, elbows?
It was everywhere. It was my elbows, my shoulders in particular, my ankles.
Yeah.
I could feel it in my knees, more so when I was kneeling on the floor and trying to get up. They were really painful.
Mm.
And over those few days, it just got really, really bad. I ended up in accident emergency in Alice Springs Hospital. They were really good. My husband was really concerned that on our travels that he might have to get the helicopter to send me back.
Wow.
So in the middle of the desert, he didn't want that to happen. So I said, look, I'll be right. We'll go to Ayers Rock and I'll just sit under a tree and read a book. I'll be fine.
Yeah, it's quite the adventure.
My husband said no.
Oh.
No,
right.
I said, well, we'll go with the doctor and we'll see what he says.
Yeah, can I just help for those international viewers and listeners who aren't familiar with where you currently are describing what's going on? Alice Springs is as much outback as you could possibly imagine. It is a very, very remote town that exists in the middle of the outback in the centre of Australia with blistering desert-like conditions. And it's a touristy town with a lot of local, Aboriginals and also, people who make their local businesses there and so forth. And they service Ayers Rock or Uluru. And from there, it's a tourist hub to go and visit that huge monolith, the biggest monolith in the world, Uluru, which is a fascinating, incredible thing to see. So here you are camping in the desert in this remote area, and you're crippled. You can't get off the floor. So, I mean, this makes for a documentary. But okay, what happened next?
So I'd been in accident emergency in the beginning of the week and seen the doctors, but it got really bad. So my husband took me back there when we were arguing about whether I was going to go to Ayers Rock or not. And I said, we'll just see what the doctors say. So the intern that saw me got the head doctor in, who said to my husband, is this lady your wife? And he said, yes. Well, if she was my wife, I'd have her on the next plane back to Adelaide. She's really sick. We're not sure what's going on. It's not point in taking bloods here because you're just travelling again after. She'd be better off getting all these tests done back in Adelaide. So then he had to book me a flight back to Adelaide and drop me off there the next day. We'd only been married 18 months and I had to leave him with my two children,
wow,
which I've never done before.
Yeah.
And they got to see Ayers Rock, but I missed out. So I've still got to do that trip again another time.
Yeah.
I ended up here. My other son picked me up from the airport and he couldn't believe I was walking like an 80-year-old.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, Mum." And I was so glad I came back because I took really, really ill.
Yeah.
And I cried all night in pain. And I went to the accident emergency and it was busy. I waited all day. And then the rheumatologist came to see me and she wasn't sure what was going on, but she was pretty sure that's what it was. And she wanted to send me home. And I said, "Look, you can't send me home. I can hardly keep my balance. I'm a falls risk."
Mm-hmm.
So I insisted they admit me. So she did. And then over the next 2 or 3 nights, I experienced such severe pain in my body when I woke up in the middle of the night that I couldn't move.
Wow.
This happened 3 nights in a row. Now, you can imagine that I'm an ex-nurse from ICU and I'm wondering what is going on. It took me, I had to start moving my fingers a little bit, then my whole hand. It took me 5 minutes to ring the bell for help.
Yeah.
Then it took me another 5 minutes to get off the bed and then another 5 minutes to walk to the toilet. So I was really bad and I ended up having to have they thought it could be rheumatoid arthritis, but it takes a while to diagnose that.
Well, yeah.
So
Did anyone draw your blood and then run the blood tests to examine?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you were waiting on those results while you're in agony at the hospital, yeah?
Yes. And my ESR was over 100.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I thought something's really wrong.
Yeah.
And my CRP was up and I had rheumatoid factor. I can't remember what it was then, but it
was
anyway,
elevated. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was elevated. I had it. And so they had to give me intramuscular injections into both shoulders.
So I'm surprised they didn't go ahead and just give you like a sort of...
They were giving me heaps of ibuprofen.
Right, giving you ibuprofen. Okay.
Double the dosage.
Yeah.
I was on massive doses of ibuprofen and I had to have so much to stop my stomach from bleeding.
Right. Okay.
And then,
wow. Stop your stomach from bleeding from all of the painkillers.
Ibuprofen.
Man, because it's so bad for the gastrointestinal. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay. So what were they giving you to prevent that? Were they giving you like proton pump inhibitors, like these drugs to try and prevent?
No, they had me on like a painkiller. Oh, I can't remember what it was now, but they ended up a few days later putting me on Panadine four times a day for the pain, which, you shouldn't be on, but I had to have intramuscular injections of cortisone into both shoulders, one each, and then that improved my symptoms a little bit. Then 3 days later, I had to have another cortisone injection into my backside.
Yeah, well, that's the one I was expecting. That's the one that I thought they might give to you right away just to get you functioning again. Okay, so talk about
7 days in hospital.
You're 7 days in hospital, right? And then you've left there pumped up with prednisone, painkillers, injections into your shoulders, and walked out. So obviously those interventions are all very temporary. So what happened next? I mean, you've gotten off to this tragic start. Like it's very fascinating at this point. So how did things develop?
Well, I was on Panadine four times a day for 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so I was having problems going to the toilet by this stage. Mm-hmm. And I was still on the ibuprofen, which I was then finding out I needed to get off because it's really bad for my gut.
Yeah.
But I was taking the other medication to stop the bleeding. My husband said to me, "Julie, you're turning into a drug addict. You can't stay on that." I said, "Well, I have to. I'm in too much pain."
Yeah.
And so I started researching anti-inflammatory foods.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was wrong with me at this stage because this happened in September. I wasn't actually diagnosed till January in 2017.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I did my own research and I thought I had fibromyalgia, and I came across this YouTube video where these people that had years just had fruit and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
and their pain got better. So I thought, oh, I'll give that a go. It could be that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you know what happened? This is the start of my getting off the drugs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
60% of my pain had gone within a week.
Just by eating fruits and veggies.
Just eating fruit and vegetables.
And you would have lost quite a lot of weight as well during that week. Yep.
Actually, I was so full of inflammation.
Yep.
You wouldn't believe this, but I lost 5 kilos in 3 days.
Wow.
Because I was just so full of inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was on my normal diet, dairy and everything then.
Yeah, sure.
And then the following week, I kept doing just fruit and veg, and my pain had reduced by 80%.
Wow.
So then I was able to cut back on the Panadine Forte. I stopped gradually over those few days having the Panadine Forte and just having Panadol.
Okay.
I cut back on the ibuprofen.
Yeah.
Through looking at the anti-inflammatory foods, I found that garlic, ginger, turmeric. I started having heaps of that in my food.
Yeah.
And I started to get better.
Yeah.
Then I came across autoimmune paleo, so I gave that a go. And I started to get better, but it was still there.
Mm-hmm.
It was still there. And then the symptoms, even doing that, the symptoms started to get worse until finally in January I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, I wouldn't say.
But I had managed to get off all the Panadine Forte by then.
Yes, huge effort, which I put down to the fruits and vegetables stage, which is fantastic. I wouldn't say even doing the AIP approach that you were able to keep symptoms. Sorry, no, I would say that symptoms continued to come back after you introduced those. Yeah. Because let's face it, like almost nothing can compete with just fruits and vegetables. It's actually not enough calories to get you to sustain you, and it's probably not completely nutritionally sufficient. However, it's fantastic for inflammation reduction, and so that was obviously a little bit of genius on your own part. You've been resourceful and gone and found other people who've done something and gotten success. And we know that success leaves clues. You've taken those clues, you've implemented them yourself. You've got the same results as those folks. And then you've been able to get off some of the real nasty stuff for your gut. Okay, and then you've experimented with a meat inclusion diet that's high in fat that we know is not successful long term.
Yeah.
You've had some challenges.
I kept having meat and dairy after I stopped that fruit and veg.
Right.
Yeah, so I went back to my normal diet basically.
Okay.
But heaps more fruit and veg.
Okay.
And not as much bread.
Got diagnosed. And so when you got diagnosed, what did the rheumatologist want to do?
The rheumatologist, at that point, I remember my ESR was 56. My C-reactive protein was 24.
Okay.
And I still had the rheumatoid factor at 14, I think it was.
Yep.
She said, well, you need to go on methotrexate. You're pretty bad. By this stage, it had got quite worse over a few weeks. And I had, those elastic supports that you can get, tubular supports. Well, I had them on my ankles, my elbows, my knees. And I was finding it a bit difficult to walk again then. Mm-hmm. So the doctor said, I need to put you on methotrexate, and I heard alarm bells. I said, really? Mm-hmm. I said, well, hang on a minute. She said, well, you need to take this because your symptoms are really bad. You were really sick in hospital. It's the same rheumatologist that seen me in hospital when I was really sick.
Okay.
She said, you've got to take this because you can lose function and your bones can get attacked, your joints can get attacked quite quickly. And I'm really worried about you. You must take this methotrexate. I said, well, okay, well, just give me the script. And so I went home and I went into panic mode. I looked at methotrexate and I thought, there's no way I'm going to take this. Mm-hmm. So because of all the side effects. And I had asthma really badly before as well, before I ended up in Alice. And I'd just been put on a preventer, which I stopped taking because I thought that was causing my joint inflammation.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, I don't want any more damage happening to my lungs. I'd had whooping cough with my when I was pregnant 11 years ago. I was really sick with that, and that damaged my lungs a bit.
Okay.
So anyway, I came across your program when I was doing all my research. I saw you on YouTube and I came across your program and I started doing that. So I did the celery and the cucumber juice for a couple of days and the pain eased a lot.
Yeah.
So once I saw you doing a YouTube video where you're explaining how rheumatoid arthritis starts, and once I understood that it starts in the gut and big proteins end up in the blood, your immune system attacks that, but it attacks the end of your joints because it looks just like the protein in the blood. Once I understood that, there was no way I was eating meat of any sort ever again.
Wonderful.
Because,
Wonderful. Okay. Wow. Now that's profound. Yeah. Okay. Good. So you've sort of identified with the explanation because of your nursing background. This made sense to you, and you liked that explanation. So now that was sort of the penny drop moment. Okay. So you've done the first 2 days of the juice cleanse, and then you've moved on to the basic foods. Over the coming months, were you able to avoid the methotrexate, and were you able to get all your symptoms
I
suppressed?
never went on the methotrexate.
Okay.
Because my symptoms got better as quickly as I got sick back in September.
Wow.
I made a very quick improvement. So within a week of not eating meat, dairy, anything from an animal at all, I was able to get rid of those supports. And I was able to run with no pain and climb stairs with no pain.
Oh my gosh.
I'm serious. I was just blown away. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, yeah.
And 3 months later, I went back to that doctor and she said, how are you going to methotrexate? I said, I'm not taking it.
Yeah.
I know you said I should, but I'm much better. And so she tested my joints and that, or, my wrists and my elbows, and she said, you're going into remission. And she told me that couldn't happen. I had asked her about diet early, and she said, no, diet has little to do with it.
Yeah.
You could lose function, everything. You must take this methotrexate. And I thought, no, I'm sure there's another way.
Yeah.
And so anyway, she couldn't believe it. And she checked my bloods and she said, oh, wow. Because then in 3 months, my ESR had dropped to 18.
Normal.
From 56 to 18 in 3 months. My C-reactive protein had dropped 24 to 16.
Yeah.
She didn't test my rheumatoid factor that time, but she knew that I was getting better. So I kept doing that.
Yep.
And then, so I was able to work as I had been working. I work part-time, casual.
Yeah.
I actually work with Aboriginal men with complex needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a nanny.
Fantastic.
So, I was able to keep working because at that point when I saw the rheumatologist and she said, you need to methotrexate, I was about to resign.
Yeah.
Because I was finding it so difficult to walk and get in and out the car.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure a lot of people following along right now can relate to that. Okay, so it seems to me like you've had, across the spectrum of ways in which we respond to dietary changes, it seems that your body was extremely sensitive to the either the animal fats or the animal proteins or both. And you may not have necessarily been particularly susceptible to food sensitivities as such. It might have just been generic animal fat, animal protein. And so
I was actually sensitive to dairy.
Yeah. Well,
because I'd had problems with my gut 3 years before this happened.
Yep.
And it just got worse.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, I couldn't have a teaspoon of milk. I'd be on the toilet for 2 days with diarrhea.
Right.
So I couldn't have milk. I could have a little bit of cheese back then, but not now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I had a lot of gut issues.
Yeah.
And wasn't sure why. So you can,
Yeah. I mean, it's a prerequisite of developing these diseases to have a gut issue.
Yeah.
It's a prerequisite. Now, let's talk about this a little bit more. You mentioned in the moment or two that we spoke just before we started recording that you, just like me, took a whole bunch of antibiotics leading up to your
Yes,
inflammation commencement.
that's right.
Can you share with us how long you took antibiotics for and how close it was until what the period was between the antibiotics and when you got symptoms?
Yes, well, that started the antibiotics in January of 2016, and it sort of went away for a couple of weeks, and I was back on antibiotics, and it went away for a couple of weeks, and they put me back on antibiotics. I think it was amoxicillin most of the time, and then they put me on a different one. So over about 5 months, I'd been on 4 lots of antibiotics, and then when they did the wise doctor decided to do an actual swab, found out it was fungal.
Yeah, and we're talking about
there was no
ear
need.
infection. Yeah, we're talking about an ear infection. Yeah.
There was no need for me to have been on all those antibiotics,
And
which
then,
I was upset about.
Yeah, most definitely.
When I found out what it had done.
Because if you're eating foods that aren't compatible with your body, the body's got digestive issues as a result. We've got a bad microbiome, and then on top of that unstable environment, we throw down the antibiotics, which then obliterate good and bad bacteria, and then we do it again, and then again. Yeah, it's just the final straw and snaps everything, and the body gets completely out of whack. And then stuff starts entering the blood that shouldn't be there, and we can't stop it because we've lost our mucosal lining and we've got these holes in our epithelium, and all hell breaks loose, and then it becomes permanently confused. So, so I just wanted to include that because we see this time and time and time again, this consecutive or multi-use of antibiotics leading up to the symptoms commencing, almost as a trigger or a causative mechanism. Okay, so now
then it was September when I got really sick.
So it was like 6-7 months later, something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think the last lot was in May.
Okay.
4 months later.
4 months later. Yeah. Interesting. So my antibiotics I took were as a teenager and into my early 20s. And I took 5 years of consecutive doxycycline. Like that's got to be some kind of stupidity record. Anyway, so that's what I did. And then, of course, I was throughout the 20s, it's probably our worst dietary years. I was at university where I'm drinking casually and also, eating lots of 2-minute noodles for late night snacks when I'm up studying late and that kind of silly stuff. And then
getting adequate nutrients.
Yeah, that's right. Flooding my body with purity. And then I had what you described earlier. I would always be sensitive to dairy. So I'd noticed that if I had 1 spoon of ice cream, the first spoon of ice cream that I would have, I would immediately feel my nasal cavity block up. So I couldn't breathe through my nose. So I'd eat it and I couldn't get air. And I always thought that's the weirdest thing. And I started seeing naturopaths years before I got diagnosed with rheumatoid. I was seeing naturopaths trying to work out what's wrong, why do I react to dairy? And it's actually it's mind-blowing that I kept eating dairy. It's mind-blowing. But it does give me this empathy. It gives me empathy to have these conversations with others and with clients who say, well, I was doing this and then I was still eating dairy and stuff because I, despite the most powerful evidence, continued to eat things that were having a negative impact on me because I couldn't.
Because you like them.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe that the whole of Western society could be all wrong. How could we all be wrong and all eating the wrong thing together like fools? And yet we are. Well, I was. Yeah.
My kids have started to change their eating as well.
Great.
My 21 and 17-year-old sons live together, and I was quite surprised when I went round to their flat and they had rice milk in the fridge.
No way.
And I said, what are you doing with rice milk? They said, Mum, you told us milk was bad for us.
There you go.
And then my 17-year-old son, who's a fantastic cook, he's got all these cans of chickpeas and lentils. He was cooking a big curry,
Wow.
I also did explain to them that lentils is a lot cheaper than meat.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
like a can of 4 bean mix or lentils in Coles, it's like 75 cents.
Yeah.
And you pay, so 2 cans of that for a family.
Yeah.
And you pay at least $8 or $10 for your meat. Imagine the savings.
Exactly. And,
And so it has saved our budget.
that's fantastic. And that's a global sustainability argument right there. I mean, if we want to, seriously, if we only look at the economics about it, then if everyone just went with, plant-based sources of high protein foods like lentils, which, by the way, are linked, they're the most strongest link to longevity. The longest living people on earth are linked to eating the highest consumption of lentils.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that they're a healthy food in more ways than just being, a good plant-based source of high protein content.
And the other amazing thing is, Clint, that at the big since I changed my diet radically, after getting scared from the rheumatologist, I was only sick one day in the whole of last year.
Yeah.
I had just had a little bit of a headache and had a bit of a head cold, and it went away the next day. Whereas the year before, I was sick all the time.
Yeah, dairy will do that
amazing.
too. Here's what I observe now with kids. I observe this all the time. This is what I see, right? I see a kid drinking milk, and as they're drinking the milk, the snot starts. It's like there's a leak. It's like drink, snot. And it's like, hang on a second.
It's not good for you.
It's not. It's not good for you. And the connection to me, it's like you'd light a match, you'll start a fire. Well, they drink the milk, the snot starts coming out, green, gross, horrible snot, and coughing. And why? Get off that garbage, Okay, so that's great. You weren't sick. And last year, it was actually quite famous around the world in the news stories that there was this Aussie flu going around that went through Europe and really caused a lot of problems throughout Europe. And you were going through that. You were here in Australia without experiencing or getting that sickness. That's fantastic.
And I don't take the flu vaccine.
Yeah.
I refuse to have the flu vaccine.
Yeah.
So.
It's a controversial one. I personally don't take it either, and I don't recommend that people get it most of the time without knowing specifics, but normally I say, look, I don't ever get it. I've noticed that, they've become
too healthy.
Well, I've got my own personal reasons for it, but I think that I've got a good chance of beating that thing. I'm not on any immunosuppressants. I'm not on any medications, and I eat in a way that maximizes my microbiome, which is my immune defense. So I reckon my guys are going to have a good chance of battling whatever comes at it.
Well, if I was on the methotrexate, that would suppress my immune system. And that's the rheumatologist said to me, you must make sure you have all your vaccines up to date and everything. I thought, I don't have all those vaccines.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't want to get sick all the time.
That's right.
Take that.
That's right. So the drug, so basically the drug stops you from being able to naturally fight stuff. So then you got to go and take all of these other things to try all these other medical interventions to try and stop you from getting all the things that your body would have naturally prevented you from anyway. And then we put we reveal the truth about the whole situation, and all it's doing is suppressing symptoms anyway. The methotrexate's not even addressing the underlying cause. And you go and you get rid of the underlying cause and everything goes away. The madness. It's madness. Isn't the world crazy? Yes.
But I've joined, am I allowed to say that group that I joined in Adelaide to help me stay on track?
Yeah.
I joined Plant Powered Adelaide.
Just say that again. It just broke up.
Plant Powered Adelaide.
Yep.
Which is actually run by a lovely doctor. And these people, a lot of them have autoimmune diseases or coronary artery disease and diseases that can be reversed by a plant-based diet. So all these people follow that's why it's called Plant Powered Adelaide. We're powered by plants.
Yeah.
So I found that group's good to join because I actually find this way of eating difficult.
Yeah, sure.
And I need encouragement and support to stay on track.
Yep.
I'm about to do a Food for Life course, so that Dr. Helene runs, and that's going to teach me more how to cook vegan cooking and not using oil.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I've tried not. I don't use oil now, but I was still using a little bit of oil in cooking,
Yeah.
and this course will teach me how to cook better, how to stir fry and do things
Yeah.
without using oil so things don't stick to the pan.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so I realise oil's a really bad thing to have. So
Yeah, Dr. Clapper's got some really simple wisdom around this. When people have asked him at our events together in a live format, they put up their hand, how do you do a stir fry if you don't use oil? And Dr. Clapper says, use anything that becomes wet. He said you can simply use water or use something that has water content that quickly releases onto the pan. Like onions are a good one, so they immediately release some water content. Spinach releases water content, and you can use that to begin the stir fry. But Melissa, my wife, she just uses water, and you just have to stay close to the pan because it doesn't.
Yeah.
You can't go walking off and changing TV channels and watching the news and come back because it'll be gone. The water evaporates quick.
Yeah. So my family mostly follow this now, and my husband's more vegetarian, but because he works a lot now, I do most of the cooking, so I've refused to cook 2 meals.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think it's healthier to eat vegan, so they just have to eat what I cook.
Great. And I know you've said you've only been into the marriage, less than 2 years.
3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has this brought you closer together or put strain on your relationship? Or has he reflected on...
the vegan eating?
Yeah.
He can see that it's really helped me.
Right.
So he's supporting me in this way of eating, but he does argue with me about cheese. Cheese is okay. And I go, no, cheese is not okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And no oil. Oil is good for you. Just use coconut oil. No, I can't have any oil at all.
Yeah, good.
So after we had this argument about it, he ended up making me a pastry, but it was out of polenta.
Oh, right.
And hot water with veggie stock in it. So there's no oil in it. So I can now make like a pastry base.
Oh, wow.
With no oil in it.
How clever. Oh.
Yeah, so we made that and did like a vegetable slices in it. It was quite nice. So he got the message, no oil.
Yeah, good.
He's a really good cook, so he knows other ways to do things, Yeah,
well, there's a bonus there because you haven't got the sort of meathead guy who just only wants to eat meat, who doesn't know how to cook and just says, woman, put my meat on the table. Like that's the
Well, I'm not even buying it, so good luck with that.
That's the last kind of dude you want in your life. Okay, great. Well, all this is great. Just to back up a little bit, I just want to add a little bit more encouragement to anyone who's in the South Australian region, or particularly in Adelaide. Helene, who is running that group you mentioned before, Plant-Powered Adelaide or Plant-Based Adelaide,
Plant-Powered Adelaide, yep.
She's a wonderful lady who's well connected throughout the plant-based world, and in fact, her and an event organizer, a friend of mine called Lucy, based out of Melbourne. The two of them and some other of their colleagues are organising the first plant-based conference for doctors in February 2019, and I'm going to be hosting that, and we're going to have some very big profile guests who I almost said, but I'm not allowed to say who they are, but internationally, some of the highest profile plant-based doctors in the world, very famous, are going to be presenting at that. So it's very exciting. That's coming up 2019. I think it's going to be held in Melbourne.
Pity they can't include ex-nurses.
Well, you might want to, if you want to be involved in events.
I'll ask her.
Perhaps you want to speak at one of my events one time. If I come to Adelaide, you can do a guest spot. I'll give you an open mic session for 5 minutes. You can tell
I'm just really interested in hearing the research because I often share my story with other people.
Yeah.
And I explain to them how my bloods have got better. And I actually want to go and study plant-based nutrition.
Awesome. Yep.
And so that I've actually got the facts and the research behind me that I can share with other people when I meet them.
Yeah, this is good. And so when you're enthusiastic like that, I recommend T. Colin Campbell's online course. You can do it. Yep, it's the best. So go and do that. I think it's like...
What's it called? Plant-based nutrition?
It's Yeah, it is. It's called plant-based nutrition. So it's Dr. Colin Campbell. As long as it's the
Yes.
one that's associated with his work, then that's what you're after. It's the no oils, plant-based nutrition. Yeah, it's the one. So that's what I recommend. So it's a little bit of an investment. I think it's like around about $1,000. It might be a little bit more US dollars. It could be more than that, but I just got to just going off the top of my head. And yes, that would be the thing that I would recommend. Yeah.
I've just completed a course in chaplaincy, a certificate for chaplaincy and pastoral care, and I did my pastoral care education 2 years before that. So I'm just about ready to go and start being a chaplain at the Royal Adelaide Hospital, where I used to be a nurse.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely.
So, good thing that's also come out of this is when I got really sick, I thought, what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life?
Right. Yeah.
And I'd always wanted to be a chaplain and support people in that way. So now I'm going to actually be doing that.
Well, think of how much you can affect them in so many, not just a spiritual way, but also if you get connected with them and they're in, some kind of physical pain, you can also give them some guidance around ways that they can easily make some adjustments to their lifestyle as well. So this is a great opportunity to serve.
I'd have to be careful with that, though, not to tread on any doctor's toes.
You would, but when you're telling your own story,
yes,
all I do is tell my story.
That's right. Yeah.
No one can get upset, argue, criticize, or condemn if you're just telling your story. This is what happened to me. This is what I did. And look, that's as simple as that, right? This is how it went down.
Yeah. Well, I'm 56 years young now, so.
Well, it's a great chance to put in some wonderful decades ahead of some great contribution. Contribution feels good, As a nurse, you'd have seen helping people feels really good.
Oh, I really miss it. I just absolutely love nursing. But the other thing I didn't mention is that I had a bit of a back injury from my nursing, my 2 lower discs.
Right.
But with the change of diet, my back's got a lot better as well. I think I must have had some arthritis in my lower back where that injury was. And now I just jump out of bed.
Yeah, could be.
So it used to take me a while with a stiff back, but my back's not stiff anymore. So
fantastic. Side benefits are endless, aren't they?
The other thing is also that after the death of my first husband 7 years ago, I suffered a bit of depression.
Sure.
And about 4 years later was diagnosed with bipolar. But another good thing that's happened is my mental health has got a lot better.
Yeah.
And now with the help of my doctor, I've been able to completely come off all of that medication as well.
Congratulations.
Because I think the way that you eat, when you eat all the wrong foods and that, it can cause some inflammation in your brain. So I do think that following this diet has also helped my mental health.
Wow, no doubt.
So that's an amazing thing to do. Because when I was first diagnosed, I was told I'll be on this for the rest of my life. Well, hey, I haven't been on any medication for 4 months now.
Congratulations again. That's just fantastic.
I rattled in the hospital with all the medication plus my bipolar medication. Now I'm only on one little tablet.
Yeah.
To treat my Hashimoto's.
Yes, which we'll wrap up on because we actually haven't covered that since we started recording here. But you've had Hashimoto's for, you told me prior to the recording, 18 years.
Yes.
Now, tell us, you've said that has also improved in the last, dietary change period.
Yes. Well, I started taking, I realised that I probably shouldn't be having gluten. I spoke to a naturopath online on Facebook who said I should probably be having Brazil nuts or have selenium and vitamin B12 to help support the function of my thyroid. So I did that.
Yeah.
So no gluten. I had 1 or 2 Brazil nuts a day for the selenium, high in selenium content, and high potency of vitamin B12. And within 3 weeks, I had my blood tested, which I was supposed to anyway. And my thyroid started to improve. So the doctor said, I'm going to have to reduce your medication. So I've finally I've been reduced from 150 to 100 of thyroxine, which has not happened in 18 years. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Yeah. I mean, this sort of stuff is considered like medically impossible. So it's just for me, like, you know, it's just like for me, it's like watching fireworks go off every time I hear things like that. Just like boom, boom. It's just continually mesmerizingly awesome. 18 years, you're at 1 dose. You go plant-based, you make some tweaks, add some B12 and a little bit more selenium, and you can reduce your medications for your thyroid from 150 to 100. Yeah. I mean, this sort of stuff is like so phenomenal. And if you've got Hashimoto's, of course, the body's attacking the thyroid, the sort of prognosis for that is that it may continue throughout your life and you might need more and more medications. You're reducing medications. It's not like even that you're working against gravity in a way, and you've successfully done it. So it's just deserves a big exclamation mark at the end of this little section of our chat.
And I realised gluten's really bad
and gluten,
for people
of course.
with Hashimoto's.
Yeah. Right.
And I had been having gluten. And I noticed now, after not having gluten, that when I kneel on the floor, my knees don't hurt anymore. So I did have a fall a couple of years ago and hurt my knees.
Yeah, yeah.
And, anyway, I'm feeling, once cutting gluten out, I'm feeling so much better. And I've got a lot more energy. Whereas I used to like to sleep in. Now I'm up, ready to go, you know.
Awesome. Yeah, so the way that I like to view gluten is think of it as a heavy barbell at the gym. So we go to the gym and we're lifting all the different proteins, which is the metaphor for digestion, right? So our digestive process goes in, it lifts the little barbell, it lifts the next barbell, and it keeps working. But the big, heavy weight on the bar is gluten. It's the hardest to break down in that it's a long chain, okay? So it's a long amino acid chain. It requires more effort to break down, okay? So if we can lift the bar, then it means our digestion is very robust, effective, and strong, okay? But if we can't break down the gluten or we can't lift that gluten, it just means that we haven't really built up our digestive system to the point at which it can handle it. And so I don't see gluten as particularly an enemy or something that we should all be avoiding. Yeah. I take the lead out of Dr. Douliard's book, which is Eat Wheat, and the guidance that he provides in there, which is that once we develop a strength and power to our digestive system, then wheat can be enjoyed, or not just wheat, but gluten foods can be enjoyed, and in fact have a lot of clinical benefits for health once we're able to have them back into our diet. And so it's just like, you know, if you're at the gym and you walk over and you try and lift the heaviest bar and you can't do it yet, well, you put it aside for a couple of months. You go and you keep eating all these healthy foods and lift all the other weights and break down those proteins, and you go and try and lift the weight again. And I found that for me, that after a couple of years of being away from gluten, I was then able to enjoy it again and eat foods constantly. Yeah, so it's not the sort of thing that, like oils, we need to avoid forever. Yeah, it's like it's if you struggle,
you can have
with
it occasionally. Yeah.
Well, I would say avoid it until you can have it regularly, and then when you can have it regularly, if you find that here and there, then do it here and there. But certainly don't think of it as evil or an enemy.
Yes,
it's just it's a guideline or a litmus test as to how good your digestion is.
But the other good thing that's happened was having the Brazil nuts for the selenium, the B12, and cutting out gluten is I've actually been able to lose weight again.
Great.
Because my thyroid's improved. So I've managed, whereas I couldn't lose hardly any, now I'm back to losing weight.
Congratulations. This is all so great. Fabulous. And then just to compare how you mentioned when we were first talking and you were struggling at the start and you were in Alice Springs. I mean, what's it feel like now for Julie waking up in the morning?
I actually feel like a new woman. I actually feel like I've got a different body. Yeah. Same person.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember sometimes when I was really sick, I'd come out of hospital, you know, I was walking like an 80-year-old. I was walking hunched over. I was so stiff and sore. It was almost like I was about to need a walking frame.
Yeah.
With all my supports, just so painful just to move. And now, you know, I can run and walk. I can do anything.
Yeah.
So I do love swimming. Swimming really helps my joints.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Any exercise that we can add to our day more and more and more. I just think exercise is so underutilized and crucial. Absolutely. So well done, Julie. Well, thank you for joining me today. It's been fun. I've enjoyed listening to your story, and you got such a fun personality. So it's been really enjoyable to chat. Congratulations on everything that you've achieved. And it's really exciting that you're part of a group so that you can inspire others in that Adelaide group. And if you go and get your course and become, educated formally via that sort of format, then you'll feel that extra degree of confidence and have that extra sort of string in your bow to be able to speak about these things more often. If people ask you, you know, what should I do? And what about this? And what about that? You'll be able to cover all the answers confidently.
Yes.
So awesome. So thank you very much today. And I look forward to keeping in contact with you down the track.
Thank you.